Hi, my name is Sarah Wooten, and today I'll be discussing opioid addiction and tools to help in seeking a successful recovery. I have personal experience in supporting loved ones and friends experiencing addiction, and in some cases, specifically addiction to opioids. I've also spoken to experts about addiction recovery and continue to educate myself by reading scientific papers and articles regarding opioid addiction in the United States. So, first, you're not alone. Opioid addiction impacts millions of Americans, and it's never too late to overcome and choose recovery. You can learn to love the person beneath the addiction again. Many resources are available. And this is a serious problem in the United States. In 2017, the opioid crisis in America was declared a public health emergency. And the CDC states that 91 Americans die every day from an opioid overdose. So that's over 30,000 deaths per year. Further, they explain that the majority of drug overdose deaths, meaning more than 6 out of 10, involve an opioid. And since 1999, the number of overdose deaths involving opioids, including prescription opioids and heroin, have quadrupled. Let's go ahead and talk about what causes opioid addiction. Let's try to understand this a little deeper first. So, addiction to opium has a long and troubled history. Perhaps you've learned in a world history class about the opium crisis in China, which led to the Chinese and British opium wars between 1839 and 1842. And prescription opioids that we use today are naturally derived from the poppy plant, which is also the source of heroin. And heroin is a Schedule I drug, meaning there is currently no accepted medical or recreational use permitted, and deeming it an illegal substance. So that's just something to consider. So what led to the current opioid crisis in the United States? In a 2022 article by Karen Feldscher, written for the Harvard School of Public Health, Dr. Koh explains that in the 1990s, OxyContin was promoted by Purdue Pharma and approved by the FDA, which led to the first instances of overdose and death linked to legal prescription opioids. So there's a lot to unpack there specifically, and I recommend reading that article as well as other sources about how that essentially went down and the serious consequences of it. So next, what's happening medically in our bodies when taking an opioid? When taking a prescription opioid, what is happening in our bodies? The Mayo Clinic explains that opioids trigger the release of endorphins, so the brain's feel-good neurotransmitters. And endorphins muffle our perceptions of pain and boost a feeling of pleasure, creating a temporary but powerful sense of well-being. So how does taking an opioid that's prescribed by your doctor, how does that actually develop into an addiction? So Mayo Clinic further explains that when taken repeatedly over time, so when taking an opioid repeatedly over time, the body slows its production of endorphins. So the same dose of opioids stops triggering the same feelings, which is called tolerance. So one reason opioid addiction is common is that people who develop tolerance may feel driven to increase their doses so they can keep feeling good. So now that we understand some of the history of opium as well as opioids and addiction, and medically what's happening within our bodies when taking an opioid and what can lead to addiction, let's discuss what treatment options are. So first and foremost, working directly with a therapist or a psychiatrist that specializes in addiction, that is incredibly important, because working with a professional who it is their job to understand how to help you overcome this is quite powerful and can create a really big impact on a lot of people's lives who are suffering from addiction. And next, So if you're speaking with your doctor and setting up a treatment plan, they may prescribe medications to essentially help alleviate withdrawals and cravings. A couple of those specific medications are methadone and extended release naltrexone, as well as buprenorphine. Excuse me for not knowing how to pronounce that one correctly, but those are some of the medications that may be prescribed. But according to the National Institute on Drug Abuse, medication should be combined with behavioral counseling, meaning speaking with a therapist, for a quote-unquote whole patient approach known as medication-assisted treatment. So if you're going to be prescribed medications to help with overcoming the addiction to the opioid, you are going to also want to simultaneously be speaking with a therapist. And, you know, of course, you can seek treatment at a rehabilitation center. I mean, these centers have, you know, essentially almost always everything available that I just listed, if not more. And again, these are centers that are designed to help people who are struggling with addiction, and you'll be surrounded by, you know, professionals who really care and know what they're doing. And of course, there is no one size fits all in recovery. You may try some things that just don't work and may not be right for what you need. If that happens, don't give up. You know, there are many ways to approach treatment and long-term recovery. So now that we understand a little bit about recovery, let's talk about, you know, loved ones who are supporting, you know, someone who is seeking recovery or who may be in active addiction. And it can be a difficult experience, you know. So how to support loved ones battling opioid addiction. So number one, in my opinion, is learn to love and support and not enable. So according to meta addiction treatment, enabling can look like ignoring their behavior or saying it isn't that bad, providing them with money or somewhere to stay while they are in active addiction. So that's an important point here, active addiction versus recovery. Downplaying the severity of their problem, lying to other people about what's going on, covering up their addictive behavior, shielding and protecting them from consequences, as well as tolerating mental, verbal, emotional, or physical abuse. And so enabling is giving someone the authority to do something. And so, you know, you can still love someone and not enable them while they're in active addiction, and provide your loved one with that emotional support while they're in recovery. You know, and another point here is to focus on solutions and ways forward. Seek help and support from groups for families and friends of addicts. You know, have open conversations about recovery as a group or as a family. And also independently work directly with a mental health professional for your own mental health well-being. And so, you know, speaking to a therapist because you have a loved one who is suffering from addiction is okay and can be very helpful. And very, very importantly here is do not, under any circumstances, sacrifice your health or safety. You know, build safe boundaries for yourself, no matter how that may look. You know, don't make compromises in your own health to support a loved one in active addiction. And absolutely, if you are being actively harmed or are in physical danger, dial 911 immediately. So the way forward may feel scary, but recovery is possible. And these are a few resources available just around Atlanta, you know, as well as in Georgia. But there are many more resources online to help with recovery for opioid addiction, as well as national centers that can help you find a treatment center if you are outside of the state of Georgia. But some really great ones here near Atlanta are the Summit Wellness Group in downtown Atlanta, as well as the Southeast Addiction Center, which is up in Peachtree Corners. And then if those areas are not close to where you are, the Opioid Treatment Providers of Georgia has a very comprehensive list of facilities throughout the state to also check and see if one of those may be right for you. So again, thank you very much for your time and listening to this. I hope it was helpful. And remember, it is never too late to seek recovery and love the person beneath your addiction again. Thank you.